Hello and welcome to week 4. This week we'll be talking about the physician labor market. First we'll talk about physician training, medical school, residency, that whole process, and then the financial and economic returns to undergoing medical training. We'll discuss physicians' work hours and barriers to entry into that profession. And then we'll talk about physician agency, how well they're able to represent the interests and needs of consumers, and some points of conflict in that relationship, like physician-induced demand for medical services, and also physician discrimination that can kind of complicate that relationship with their patient. So first we'll talk about physician training. Entry into medical school, really worldwide, is a highly competitive and selective process. In the US, only about 50% of applicants are eventually accepted into at least one medical school, and that's after they've done all of their prerequisites and taken their MCAT exam and everything. The length of time that you spend in medical school, though, varies between different countries. In the US and Canada, people undergo the regular bachelor undergraduate 4 years and then take another 4 years for medical school. But in Europe, applicants go directly into one medical program and just graduate with their medical degree. Med school can be really expensive, really anywhere in the world, because there's a lot of highly specialized training going on. So in the US, it's between 150 and 225,000 for the 4-year period. European medical training is often very heavily subsidized. So if there is any tuition, it's often no cost to the person undergoing that training. So after you finish your bachelor's degree and your 4 years of medical school, as it is in the US, you go on to finally on-the-job kind of training. Actually, in medical school, years 3 and 4, you're kind of in clinic. You're doing rotations to the different sites, but it's still a process of learning rather than really a job. Whereas residency, it's not the classroom, it is learning on the job. So residency is that period. It follows medical school where you do that learning. So very new residents lack experience of acting as a physician. And so when they arrive at the hospital, there is actually empirical evidence that medical errors go up. They all enter, at the end of the 4 years, the next kind of semester is starting. It's in July when they go in the US. So it's called the July effect here, or the August killing season in the UK. So physicians tend to work really long hours, especially during residency. That can happen. So often over 60 hours a week. And if you're on call, you could end up working up to 30 consecutive hours. In 2003, there was they did implement some limitation to the number of hours per week that a doctor can work, including residents. So it's no more than 80 hours a week now. And there was no change in patient mortality when they implemented that rule. The thing is, many residents still do work over 80 hours a week while only reporting 80. So there are some trade-offs in the number of hours per week that you're going to be working. So if you're working these longer hours, you can become fatigued. Like imagine you're on call for over 30 hours straight. So you can get tired, and that can deter or alter your cognitive abilities, which can actually impact the patient's health at the end. But at the same time, shorter work hours, you might be getting less exposure to the practice, and you might be not learning as much, and there might end up being greater chance for error. So ultimately, it's an empirical question about which effect you think dominates. So you can pause this video for just a moment and think about it, which one you think is going to end up being greater. So what they actually ended up doing to find out the real answer to this question was randomizing. They did a randomized experiment of this where some residents were assigned to the traditional work week of 80 hours per week, which is insane. And then the rest of them to the short work week, which means 60 hours per week. And then in the end, they compare what kinds of error rates the two groups had. So in the end, it turns out that shorter hours lead to fewer medical errors for these physicians in the ICU at Brigham and Women's at Harvard. It's one of the top hospitals in the country. But what they find is that the traditional hours group committed, meaning 80 hours per week, committed 36% more serious medical errors, 21% more medication errors, 5.6 times more diagnostic errors, where they're trying to figure out what illness is it that you have, that could be affected by your fatigue. So 5.6 times more diagnostic errors. But most of the serious errors, the senior physicians on staff were able to intercept. But when you compare between the two, it was better among those that had the shorter work week.